Why did you want to be a cosmonaut?
Наверное, да, как-то раньше не задумывался об этом.
Actually, it's true. I haven't thought about it.
Ну, в частности, когда был еще ребенком, потом взрослел,
When I was growing up,
учился в школе, были разные планы насчет моего будущего.
when I was in school, I thought about different types of future, imagined different types of future for myself.
Были планы, что
My
хочу быть
father was
только
in the military, so when I
военным,
was
только
very little,
офицером.
I only wanted to be an
Потом планы
officer.
поменялись.
Then my plans changed.
И где-то уже в 9 классе,
And then probably in the 9th grade, I was about 15 years old, I happened to hear from a classmate that we do have an organization that prepares future cosmonauts. I was interested in what it was. I found it. I went there. I talked to one of the managers, and eventually I was accepted. And so I was very excited about it. I took classes on cosmonautics, on the hardware and technologies that is used in space. Also, just general philosophical issues such as why we're doing this and where we want to go from here. We used underwater equipment to dive. We would jump with a parachute. We did a lot of interesting activities, and we also participated in competitions. Not sure how I can say it. This was the Korolov reading competition where children would prepare projects that they would use to compete. This was done in Moscow, based on the Bauman University, and that's a well-known college in Russia. And so I participated in such a competition, and we brought several projects from our little team, and two of my friends and I created our own project, and it was actually the reuse vehicle, space vehicle. And so that was interesting for me because that was my opportunity to see this college. I walked down the halls, I looked at it, I liked it, and I decided that's where I want to go to college. I realized that it was very difficult to become a cosmonaut. You have a lot of requirements that you have to meet. You may or may not get lucky, but I decided that in any case, if I do get to become a cosmonaut, that's great. If not, then I will still want to work in the space industry. That's it.
Tell me a little bit then about your educational and in your professional career. You brought us up to where you attended the Bauman University. Tell me about your studies and how your professional career then led you to becoming a cosmonaut.
Yes, I graduated from the Bauman University in 1993 with a degree in mechanical engineering, specializing in the spacecraft, specifically building the spacecraft. And a few years after that, for a few years, I worked at the RC Energia. This is the design bureau that developed and still develops satellites and spacecraft, starting back in the beginning of the space era. And they continue working on it presently as well. So I worked several years in the design department, specifically in the department that develops and modifies the cargo vehicles. So after a few years, I decided I want to be a cosmonaut, and I applied. I went to take my medical commission. And I passed, and also my technical preparation, and so I became a candidate cosmonaut.
You mentioned a moment ago that you said your father was in the military. Does that mean that you grew up living in many cities around the country?
Yeah.
Where is it that you consider to be your hometown?
I was born in the North Caucasus, Stavropol region, the city of Nevinomesk. That's a small town. But my family left it shortly after my birth. We lived in many cities, but most of my life I spent in Ukraine, the city of Zaporozhye. So that is my Ukraine, I can say, is my second native country. I have many relatives and friends there as well. Also, we were supposed to live for 3 years in Kamchatka, the Kamchatka Peninsula, which is the easternmost part of Russia. I remember that, and the nature is very beautiful there, but the living conditions were pretty harsh. But again, most of my life I spent in Ukraine. That's where I graduated from the high school. That's where I became interested in cosmonautics, and that's where I traveled to Moscow from to get into college.
Into college, and as you've explained, working for Energia and now as a cosmonaut, the flying in space part of your job as a cosmonaut is a part that we all know can be dangerous. So, Oleg, I'm interested, what is it that you believe that we get, what is it that we learn or achieve as a result of flying people in space that makes it worth taking that risk?
В этом случае могу процитировать, как сказал Константин Циолковский.
I could quote Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who said in the beginning of the last century that humanity will not forever stay on Earth, that we will expand beyond Earth at first and then beyond the solar system. So I think that it's just an inherent nature of a human being to expand, to research. Earth is the cradle of our civilization, but it is possible right now it's not the best time for us, but I think it's temporary, and we will move forward and move beyond our planet and continue developing our civilization. So this is the future global plans. Now for the immediate future, I think it gives us new knowledge in technology and medicine and science. Also new capabilities of learning more about our planet, about the processes that take place in the place where we live, what causes events, what we should do to preserve our planet just as favorable for survival as it is now.
You are a member of the International Space Station's Expedition 25 and 26 crews. Could you please summarize for me the goals of your 6-month flight and tell me what your main responsibilities will be during this time?
Because I'm the flight engineer for both the Soyuz vehicle and the station, my first and foremost responsibility is the vehicle. To be able to spend 6 months on board of the ISS, you should be able to get to the ISS first. We will be testing the new modification of Soyuz, and that means additional responsibility. Also, our responsibilities on board of the ISS, just like for any other crew member, my responsibilities will include to performing a number of medical experiments, perform 3 EVAs, assembling additional equipment. So I'm sure I'll be busy.
This is going to be your first flight in space. Can you tell me what it was like for you when you were informed that you had been selected to make your first space flight?
Naturally,
I was very happy initially.
Especially,
it became interesting when I learned that I will be launching on the updated vehicle, and that will be the first launch for this type of vehicle. So that creates additional responsibility and, of course, additional excitement.
Well, let's talk a bit about the Soyuz vehicle. This is, as you say, an updated version of the Soyuz TMA. What is it that is new about this Soyuz, and how do those changes improve its performance?
The main modification is that they've installed the new onboard computer. Therefore, we have new software and the new motion control system for the vehicle. So there are more navigational capabilities, more control capabilities. The vehicle will continue supplying data throughout the entire flight. We will know where the vehicle is located, etc. So there are many things that I can tell you, but the main idea here is that the motion control system of the vehicle has been changed.
Do these changes make it easier for the crew members to fly, or make it more robust in its performance?
I
would say both. Both is correct. We have a new interface which makes it easier to perform the informational exchange with the computer. We will be receiving more complete information from the computer regarding the onboard systems. And that will make the process of controlling the vehicle and approaching the station more simple for the crew, I hope.
Let's talk now about the space station itself. Can you give us a sense of what the space station that you're going to arrive at is like? What sorts of modules and laboratories and other compartments are available now for this crew of 6?
It may be difficult right now to count how many modules the station has, because as you're well aware, the International Space Station is an international project that involved the participation of 16 countries. The station consists of 2 segments, the US segment and the Russian segment. The US segment consists of JAXA modules and ESA modules as well. There are 2 airlocks on the station. One is located on the US segment and is capable of supporting US equipment, and then on the Russian segment we have an additional airlock that is capable of supporting Russian spacesuits. We also have several specialized laboratory modules, the Columbus module, the JAXA module, which is the KIBO lab on the US segment, that's also a laboratory module. 2 small research or mini research modules on the Russian segment, the service module, which supports the Russian segment systems and experiments. So there are many capabilities on board of the ISS to perform scientific experiments. Specifically, we are scheduled to perform 3 extravehicular activities from the Russian airlock using Russian spacesuits.
And I want to get you to tell me about those in a second. Your description of the station as it exists today is a dramatically different space station than that the Expedition 1 crew encountered when they arrived 10 years ago. And you'll be on board for the 10th anniversary of the arrival of the first crew to the International Space Station. Oleg, in your thinking, what is it that is the best thing that has happened, that is the best achievement of the station partnership during this first 10 years of the International Space Station program?
In
addition to the technical support and the scientific support activities that we have performed, we have gained a lot of experience in international cooperation, because this is the first large-scale international project, and that allowed us to gain a lot of experience in working together, and I'm sure we can use that experience in the future as well. Additionally, as I mentioned earlier, we are performing interesting experiments on board of the ISS, including biomedical research, astrophysics, Earth observation experiments, etc. I can keep going.
Well, let's talk about that, because now with a crew of 6, there's a greater opportunity for utilization of the space station than there has been up until now. Many of the experiments are designed to find out how human beings can live and work in space. And for those, you and your crewmates are the subjects of the experiment. Tell me about some of the different kinds of investigations that will be involved during your flight, for which you will be the experiment subject.
We are scheduled to perform a number of experiments related to investigating how a human organism, human body can survive and exist in spaceflight. Specifically, weightlessness, increased radiation level. And there is a number of experiments that researches the cardiovascular system and the vegetative system. We have technological experiments that investigate how a small group of people can work for an extended period of time together in an enclosed space. We are also researching and studying how weightlessness affects the coordination skills and how we can restore our capabilities once we return to Earth.
Because certainly that's a very important thing. You want to be able to function on Earth, or if we reach another planet.
Of course, this is the work that not only researches how we work on board of the ISS for a long time, but also how we can survive the spaceflight to other planets as well.
There are a lot of other kinds of laboratory research that for which you and your crewmates will be the operators during your time on orbit. These are in other scientific disciplines. Tell me about some of those. What other kinds of science research will you be involved in during the 6 months that you'll be spending on board the station?
There
are several types of experiments. For example, for materials research, growing crystals and new materials with new properties. Also growing protein molecules. Experiments related to geophysics. Researching and observing the Earth, the radiation levels, the earthquakes. We are learning how we can predict earthquakes, the time and location. Also, atmosphere observation. Specifically, we will be developing the special methodology to research the gases being formed in the atmosphere of the station. We are going to study the environment, the ecology, the man-created and natural disasters and their consequences. And again, it's a long list. I can keep going.
That science work will, as you say, there's a lot of it, will keep you busy. You also mentioned a couple of minutes ago that the current plan for your mission calls for spacewalks, 3 of them out of the Russian section of the station in the latter part of this year. And you are going to be involved as a spacewalker in those. Tell me about who will be involved in the spacewalks and what work it is that you'll be doing outside.
According to the current plan, We will perform 3 spacewalks. 2 EVAs are scheduled for Fyodor Yurchikhin, myself, and the third one will be performed by Dmitry Kondratyev and me. So it looks like I will be participating in all 3 spacewalks. So again, that means additional responsibility, but that makes it that much more exciting. On the surface of the Russian segment, specifically outside the service module, we will need to remove some of the equipment that is working now and install new units, new hardware. Specifically the experimental unit to the laser data exchange with the ground, geophysics hardware, Splesk experiment specifically, that allows us to study the spikes in radiation that are observed immediately before the earthquakes. We will also need to launch a mini satellite, which was developed by our students. So these are the major activities that we have.
It's important, I think, for us to realize that all of the science on the International Space Station is not done inside the station, that much of it is done on the outside.
That is correct. Often, though, these are two interconnected. Some of the hardware is located inside of the station and the crew works with it. Some of the units are outside, and those are controlled in a remote manner by the crew. Also, we expose certain materials to radiation to see how the space flight or being in open space changes their properties. Biorisk experiment is something that will allow us to identify the survivability of microorganisms in vacuum and with high levels of radiation that we have in space.
Have you gotten any special guidance or instruction from your cosmonaut colleagues about performing a spacewalk and what it is like to float outside as your own little spaceship?
Ну, конечно, у нас были тренировки совместно с Федором Юрчихиным.
Of course, we had the joint simulations and joint training with Foray Yurchikhin, and he is a crew member who is very experienced in performing spacewalks in spacesuits. So there are some tips and tricks that you can use to make your work more effective, no doubt about that.
The plan for your time on orbit also now calls for a couple of visits from space shuttles. Current launch schedule has Discovery arriving at the station on STS-133 late in this year. Tell me, just in general, what is it that's on the agenda for your time or the joint mission with the Discovery crew on 133?
Ну, наверное, этот вопрос лучше задавать нашему командиру.
You should probably ask this question
все-таки больше относится к работам на американском
to
сегменте.
Scott Kelly, because he's our commander. He works mostly on the U.S. segment.
Опытный астронавт.
My understanding is that he's an experienced crew member, and it will be easy for us to work with him.
Факт, когда будут два брата работать здесь на орбите в одно и то же время.
Also, it will be interesting that we will have 2 brothers working on orbit at the same time.
Yes, that is supposed to happen in the last space shuttle mission that flies early next year. STS-134, the last scheduled flight, means that you will be on board to see that historical activity occur. Oleg, what are your thoughts about the space shuttle's place in the history of human spaceflight and its role in building the International Space Station?
Безусловно, программа Space Shuttle сыграла огромную роль
The
в
Space
строительстве
Shuttle
МКС,
program, no doubt, has
поскольку
been
практически
very
все модули
important
американского
in
континента
building the SS
доставлены
because practically all
на орбиту
US
именно
modules have been
шаттлами.
delivered
Даже один
in
модуль российского
orbit
сегмента.
by the
Мы
shuttle
модуль
and
М1.
also the new Russian module as well,
Это интересная
MRM-1.
программа, которая
It's a
показала
very interesting program that demonstrated
возможности,
the
может быть, достоинства, может
capabilities,
быть, недостатки
possibly both
многоразовой
advantages
транспортной
and
системы.
disadvantages of a multi-use
Безусловно, программа
transportation system.
продолжается уже
This program
30 лет.
has existed
Да,
for
30 лет.
almost 30 years.
И она сделала много для
And
развития
it
космонавтики.
has contributed greatly to the development of the space research.
Once the space shuttle stops flying, a major source of supplies to the station will end, but there are 3 other proven cargo ships that are supplying the station, and each one of them is scheduled to make a visit during Expedition 26. Can you tell us a little bit about the capabilities of these unpiloted Russian, European, and Japanese cargo ships, and what role the crew members have in their arrivals and then using them once they've arrived?
Конечно, HTV — это корабль, который является
HTV
разработкой
is the
японского
vehicle
космического
that has
агентства.
been
Здесь, в первую
developed by
очередь,
the
предназначен
Japanese
для
Space
снабжения
Agency, and its primarily
японского модуля, насколько я
goal
знаю.
is to
Это, наверное, сравнительно новый тип
support the
корабля, который
Japanese
называется
module. This
Free
is a new
Fly. То есть он
type
не
of
стыкуется к
vehicle, the
станции
free
напрямую сам по
flyer
себе.
vehicle, which
Он
means that it
подходит к
doesn't dock to
станции,
the station
зависает рядом с
directly,
нее, и там
but rather
оператор
it approaches the station and performs the
со
station keeping
станции
close to it,
берет
and then the operator on board of the
робот-манипулятор
ISS
и
uses the
стыкует
robotic
выбранный
arm
стыковочный узлы.
to mate it to the docking mechanism, docking port.
Насколько я знаю, то есть это будет ответственность одного из
My
американских
understanding
членов
is
экипажа.
that this will be the responsibility of one of the US crew members.
ATV — это разработка Европейского космического агентства.
ATV has been developed by the European
корабль,
Space
который будет
Agency,
стыковаться к
and this is the
российскому
vehicle that
сегменту.
will be
И
docking
за
to the
работу
Russian
с ним,
segment.
за, собственно, процесс сближения, стыковки
And the
и
process of
будет
approach
отвечать как
and docking will be
российский член экипажа, так и
something that the Russian crew member will be responsible for in cooperation with the
В частности,
European
насколько я
Space
знаю,
Agency.
что именно контролируя сближение и стыковку
I
ATV,
know
который
that
прибудет во время нашей экспедиции, должны
The
будут Александр
ATV
Калерий и
arrival that
Павел
will
Гаспалин.
take place when we are on board.
Вот. Это
Alexander
корабль,
Kaleri and
который
Paul Nitzpoli will be
способен
responsible
снабжать станцию как
for
сухими
it.
грузами,
This
так,
vehicle will
кислородом,
supply the station with
воздухом
both air,
и водой,
oxygen, dry cargo, and water
заполнять баки воды.
to
Также
fill
может
our water tanks.
использоваться
We can
для
also use
поддержания
this
ориентации
to
станции
perform
в случае
attitude
необходимости.
control for the station if necessary.
Прогресс — это российский
Progress
корабль.
is a Russian vehicle.
То есть, можно сказать, это рабочая лошадка.
You
как
can
советской,
call it a
так и
workhorse
российской космической
for the
программы.
Russian space program.
Его достоинство в том, что это корабль,
Its
который
great
может
advantage is that
стыковаться
it's the vehicle that can dock
к любому узлу космической станции,
to
в любой
any
ориентации
docking port
станции.
of the station with any station
Также,
attitude.
кроме автоматического сближения, он
And
может управляться
in
и
addition to the automatic mode, it can also be controlled manually
к станции в случае необходимости.
by the operator
Он также
inside of the
способен
station.
снабжать станцию как сухими
It can
грузами,
also supply the station with dry cargo,
воздух, вода,
air,
кислород,
water, oxygen,
и дозаправлять
and refill
баки станционной
the
двигательной установки,
station
то есть система дозаправки.
tanks with propellant.
Вкратце описание.
So that's a short description of all 3 vehicles.
So with all of those, as well as the possible commercial vehicles that are being developed, there will be a lot of different ways to continue to bring supplies to the station and change the look of the operations there in the future. Oleg, I'm interested to get your thoughts about the future of the space station beyond just your time there. Where would you think that human space exploration is headed in the next, I don't know, 20 or 50 years or so? And what role do you think the International Space Station will play in getting us ready for that future?
20-50 лет довольно большой срок
20
для
or
нас.
50 years is a long time for us.
Думаю, на протяжении следующих 10 лет
I would
станция
say
будет
that in the
развиваться и
next 10
дальше.
years,
У
the
нас есть
station will
ряд
continue
планов по
developing. We have certain
доснащению
plans
станции
to
новыми исследовательскими модулями.
deliver new research modules to the station.
Возможно, будут отрабатываться новые типы кораблей.
Possibly, we will be testing new types of vehicles.
И сейчас есть планы по использованию
And
МКС как
currently, there
полигона
are
для
plans to
отработки
use the
технологий
ISS
для
as a
полетов на
platform
планеты.
to
Хотя бы наша
prepare
Солнечная
for
система в ближайшем
flights to
будущем.
other planets in the near future.